So the last thing we're going to do is walk through the code that shows how it all works, focusing primarily on the requester side, because we've already looked at the responder side. And you can get that code the same place as everything else in the EX3 project in the RSocket folder in my Live Lessons GitHub repository. And here we are in that repository. Let's go ahead and take a look at the quotes test file. So this is the guy that puts everything in motion. You can see here that's a Spring Boot test that can run the quotes application. As I mentioned earlier, that's why I put everything in one. I put all the controllers and services in one microservice just so I could auto-launch this and didn't have to start them up manually. I've disabled debugging, so there's not lots of extraneous stuff. You're just going to see the analysis come back from the sentiment analysis that ChatGPT conducts. We auto-wire the quotes proxy. We auto-wire the sentiment proxy. We give the number of random Shakespeare's quotes to process, and you'll notice this is a rather low number. It's a rather low number because you can't give more than a few requests to ChatGPT per unit time, or it says, you're going too fast, you're asking for too much. I think if I actually paid for it, I could do more, which I'll probably do at some point, but I didn't want to do that for this particular example. We have a before all annotation that just initializes the option singleton at startup. And then we've got two methods. This is called test analyze all quotes. And this one is going to, this particular test would get a bunch of quotes. We're not going to use that one because I don't want to screw up my limit on making requests, but this one is one that you could ask for, like all the quotes in Shakespeare's Hamlet play, for example. Here's the one we're going to look at. This is the one that's the test random get quotes subscribe. So that's going to get two random quotes from Shakespeare from my database and then ask ChatGPT to analyze them. So the first thing we do is we go ahead and we make ourselves some random indices. And this is actually kind of a fun example because what it does is it goes over to it goes and makes a call to the quotes messaging controller and service, and it gets back the maximum number of quotes in the database. So once we know the maximum number of quotes, we can go ahead and create the right random indices, because now we know we don't want to ask for an indice that's past the maximum. So we can go ahead and generate some random integers. So that's the first thing we do. Then we get the results. Then we go ahead and we get a subscription. And because we're doing random things, we don't have to ask for a particular Shakespeare play. We can leave that blank. So we go ahead and say, I'm the client with this ID. Please go ahead and get a subscription, a confirmed subscription for me, please. So we get that. And now things get fun. So we take the subscription and the random indices we generated. We make a new random request. And we send that over to the responder and say, please get me back a flux of random quotes. And we looked at that code earlier. You can see it just goes off and requests those random quotes, gets the results back. So now we've got a flux of random quotes. For our purposes, we have two, but it could be more if I paid for the service. And then I go and I say, hey, sentiment proxy, please get me the sentiment for each of these quotes. And so one at a time they'll be sent. And I say, please use the ChatGPT sentiment analysis, not the Stanford Core NLP sentiment analysis. I want to do that one, so that'll go over and talk to the right controller. And then what we get back is we get back monos that contain the analysis, and I display the analysis. So here's what it says. We get ourselves a quote, and we say the sentiment analysis of quote from the play is as follows. And then we go ahead and get the analysis, and we format it nicely. And this is just so it'll be visible on the screen. And this is a fun little method that I generated from ChatGPT that takes in a string and a line length, and it uses some really cool Java Streams magic in order to format the output so it's really no longer than the max line width, which I said was 70 characters for reasons that'll become clear in just a second. OK, so we're going to display that. Then we cancel the subscription when we're done and wait till everything happens. So let's go ahead and run this program. And knock on wood, it'll still work. It worked when I tested it this morning, but you never know. So what it's doing, of course, now is it's building the code and should start the tests up in a second. And as I mentioned before, I've disabled most of the debugging output. Or in fact, I think I've disabled all the debugging output. So it's just going to show the results of making the sentiment analysis calls to ChatGPT. So we're entering that particular test program, and it should be creating the requests, going over and talking to the controller and so on to get the connection established, get the random quotes, and then feed them to the sentiment analysis. So here's what we got. So it says, the sentiment analysis of the quote, "Lord, what fools these mortals be from a midsummer night's dream," is as follows. And then as you can see here, remember I asked for it to give me back 3 sentences. And in fact, it gives me back a paragraph with 3 sentences. So it talks about the sentiment being one of exasperation and amusement. So it goes on and does a nice little analysis of what's there. And then down here we had another quote, "What's gone and what's past help should be past grief," from a more obscure Shakespeare play called The Winter's Tale. And it's basically talking about moving on and accepting things. It's like the 5 stages of dealing with grief and so on. But the cool thing is you can ask for more. You could get more analysis. You could ask for less analysis. You could ask for a 1-sentence analysis, a 20-sentence analysis. You could turn up the temperature a little bit if you wanted to, in order to be able to get things that are more non-deterministic in terms of what you get back. So that is the program. You're welcome to play around with it. I think it's a lot of fun, and it gives you the building blocks if you want to build your own applications that do something similar but ask for something other than analysis of Shakespeare quotes.